Podcast, a podcast that saves lives, one book at a time. I'm your host, Yajaira.
And I'm your host, Cheli.
There is a book tea that I do want us to talk about briefly. It still comes from Amivi Reads. Shout out, love her. And Amivi is making this whole list of all the things that go wrong in the book talk community. So on 61, it says, person who wrote the article calling book influencers shallow is now saying we are all virgins.
Was this the person whose article I sent you?
Yes, and it fucking got me riled up. Oh my God. And it was so funny because yes, but first let me just say you sent it to me very early in the morning because I think that day you woke up earlier than me. Yeah. And I just stared at the article for the longest time because my brain couldn't compute that someone actually spent time to write that.
I thought it was fake when I first read it. I was like not sure what they were trying to convey because this whole article was basically like talking about book communities like in past tense, like, oh, there used to be a booktube, there used to be this, but now people on book talk, like air quotes book talk, only buy books for the aesthetic and not actually to read it. And they were basically just calling people out for having their own, subjective views on books. And it's like, okay, well, anyone can like whatever fucking book they want, but they were just basically putting people down for how they like books now.
It was like that they were trying to gatekeep. They were trying to... The way that they were coming off was very pretentious. Like, oh, I was one of the original ones. And, thanks to me, that's why you guys do book hauls or whatever.
Oh, yeah.
Like those book tags or whatever.
They even had a line that was like, I, not to like toot my own horn, but I was one of the big ones. It's like, okay.
Like, who even are you? No offense. No offense. But like, what the fuck?
It's kind of weird to me because like this feels like a very, well, to me, because we're pretty new to book talk, it feels like a very weird community to gatekeep because I would expect that you would want more people to read because not a lot of people do. So.
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like it's always nice when we do find people that read, IRL. So yeah. I'm just like, please join this community. I need more people to talk about books with. So I just don't understand why they were being so pretentious and also just, I don't know. Like for a while, I thought it was just like, maybe they're trying to be sarcastic and maybe they're trying to be funny. But no, I think they're being serious. And I think that they actually want to actually gatekeep this community, but obviously they can't.
Yep. I hate that. I hate it. Whatever. I can't believe, by the way, that Amivi Reads has been doing this, like writing all of the book tea since the beginning of this year and is already on like the 60s going on 70s.
I know. I mean, is it that surprising though? I feel like stuff does happen like every day, but it is crazy and thank God that she's keeping track of everything.
I know. I can't wait to see how far this goes like by the end of the year because it's basically one for every day.
Right? Yeah. No, it's gonna be long. I think she might be overwhelmed by like 2 months from now, maybe.
Yeah, but I'm nervous to see what ends up on there because there are some that I read and I'm like, that doesn't even feel fucking real.
No, yeah, I agree.
Talking about things that don't feel real.
Good segue.
We are talking about a psychological thriller today called When No One Is Watching by Alyssa Cole.
So I'm going to start this off by giving a spoiler-free summary, and then after that, we're going to spoil it, okay? So here's my summary. After a failed marriage, Sydney Green moves back into her mother's home to care for it, but she notices that the neighborhood that she grew up in is rapidly changing, and she notices that gentrification is forcing her neighbors out. When No One Is Watching is a psychological thriller where Sydney has to uncover the disappearances of her neighbors.
Damn, that was a really solid summary.
Thank you.
That's pretty much the entire book, but of course there's a lot of things that go on throughout. So if you are into psychological thrillers, suspense, romance,
oh my God, it's
just
raining.
kidding.
I'm sorry. What did you say?
Romance, just kidding. No, if you're into suspense,
there is romance. There's romance. There's
romance.
I love how you do. If you're into psychological thrillers, romance. Like, damn, mute it. Bleep it out.
Do check this book out, though. I think that it really does help if you read the book before we talk about it, just so that you're in the know.
Yeah. And then that way, when we discuss it, you can be like, hell yeah, I remember that part.
Yeah, of course. My girl, A. Cole? Hell yeah. Okay.
A. Cole.
But
we go way back.
Before we start talking about the book, Yajaira and I don't tell each other how we feel about the book. And we actually both finished it fairly recently. So we're still fresh. We're still fresh with our feelings. Fresh. So that being said, I'm going to guess what Yajaira thinks about this book. And honestly, I feel like I know you. Like the back of my hand, I know you. And I think you do like thrillers. I know that you don't really seek them out as much, but I think when one is presented to you.
Anytime we talk about a thriller, you always say that. You're always I think you like thrillers.
I can never remember, but I remember that you were really into Agatha Christie when you were younger. So
yeah, I still am. Shout out Agatha
Christie.
AC, my girl.
My girl Agatha?
Oh my God, wait, I shouldn't even say that because I don't know anything about her. So what if she's like not a good person?
Oh my God, she's not a good person. And you're like, wow, I guess. And then there were none. I don't know.
I don't know. Ooh, mic drop. Mic drop by BTS. I love that.
Dude, our whole show is going to be just references to things.
And if you don't get it.
It's going to be like our Punk 57 episode.
Dude, I love that episode.
Thank you. We need to try it again. Probably not for this one. It doesn't feel like the right mood. Yajaira, I think that you liked this book, but I don't know if you loved it. I'm going to say that you gave this a 3. I don't want to say anything else because I know that we spoil each other when we guess each other's ratings, so I'm just going to say 3.
So are you saying that now anytime that we guess each other's ratings, we should just keep it short, sweet, to the point? Because
I think
there have been a couple times where I felt like you were projecting, and honestly, I appreciate when you do that because then I'm like, damn.
Well, I'm sorry I project. I would just really like talking about my feelings with you because I love you, but you're right. Maybe we shouldn't project.
I love you too.
Wait, did I say the L word? I'm embarrassed. Okay, go ahead.
God, dude, it's only 12 minutes in. You can't say the L word yet. I am gonna take a wild guess for you, okay? Because I know that you do enjoy thrillers. I'm going to say you would give this a 3.75 because you can do that on Storygraph.
I want to start off by talking about our main girl, Sydney.
Okay.
So Sydney is from Brooklyn. They live in New York. And she lives in this neighborhood that she has grown up in. And she has she's like an OG Brooklyn person. Like she is original. How did she say it? She has basically seen Brooklyn from the start, and she's getting a little, I would say like sad and frustrated because little by little, she's basically seeing people that she grew up with move away and just like be replaced by people who are like
more wealthier, paler.
They're more there for the aesthetics of New York and not really like
for the culture, for the people. And something that I liked about the beginning of the story is when that, oh my God, I forgot his name. That realtor went up to her and was like, hey, you can sell your place for this much money. You know, you should do it before X, Y, and Z. And Sydney was immediately like, No, like I'm not going anywhere. And I like how firm she was with that. And I also loved that even at the beginning of the story, we could see like the connections that she has with her neighbors. Like they have a community together. So those relationships were very important to her. So when this realtor is like trying to convince her to, oh, well, you should move because you know what? At the end of the day, it's all going to crash. So you either do it willingly or it's going to just happen. It's basically what he was hinting at her. And I also love the attitude that she has because she calls him a nickname only because she knows that he hates it. And I'm just like, I fucking love her because I just love that she does not back down from leaving this place just because of all of these like more wealthier people coming in and changing everything, because even the community itself is changing, like the small businesses and all that.
I also really like that our main character, well, she's one of the main characters, but she's also incredibly vocal with everything because she puts a lot of her time into these walking tours around Brooklyn. And I don't know if it's only her. I'm guessing it's not, because on the walking tour, they always tend to like just give the history of like the white people that used to live there. And it's like, okay, but why don't you talk about who originally lived there, which is like a jazz musician. It is this person. It is this person. And like more talking about like the original people in the community. And
I love that.
Fucking love it.
And I also love that when she would say that, like she would say like, oh, mention those people, like the actual people that matter. The fucking girl was like, oh, well, if you have a problem with it, you know, you can talk to somebody else about it. Like, why are you telling me?
Can I ask you a question real quick?
Yeah.
We both listened to this in audiobook and it kind of threw me off. Honestly, it like kind of scared me. I don't like when things are too realistic but somewhat uncanny. Like, I've already told you that that's like the thing I fear the most, where it's like it's possible for it to happen, but it doesn't seem like something a human would do. And if it is something a human would do, it's someone who's fucked up. This story starts with like, I think it's not part of the story, but just like a news article about a theme park that's opening up called Black America.
Oh my God, yes. I remember that. And it's so... Yeah, I agree with you. It is uncanny because the amusement park would have like slaves. Like it had actual people there. And that was the whole point of the attraction.
Yeah. And it was
to
give people the experience of how it felt like to have slaves.
Yeah. Which was so fucking weird.
What the fuck was that?
I don't know.
Because was it ever brought up again?
No, and I'm so glad that you brought it up because I remember listening to that and just being like, what the fuck? I even made a note of it on my phone because I was listening to it at work. But then it was never brought up again. So then it just completely slipped my mind.
Okay, then I think I was just wondering if I had missed anything afterwards. I think it kind of just goes with like the overarching theme of this entire story, which is that, you know, gentrification is something that is slow. And when it happens, it feels like the rug has been pulled out from under you. Yeah. So that's basically kind of where it's going at. But before we get into all of that, I do want to say that Sydney felt like a very strong character, but I don't think I like how her character ended up.
I would 100% agree with you because I feel like near the end when all of the shit was happening, I had to pause the story because it almost felt like not out of character, but kind of out of character. Like, you know what I mean? Like, I know she's a strong character and even from the very beginning, like she never backed down. But for her to go from that to what happens at the end, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I don't know. It kind of took me out for a second there.
I didn't agree with it. And we'll talk more about it later, but I feel like first we should talk about Theo. First of all, A+ name. Theo? Theo? I fucking love that name.
Okay, whatever.
Theo is he's a white man that moves in with his fiance, right?
Can I just say, I love that you always talk about hating names. So it's like a rarity when you're like, I fucking love this name.
Well, don't you remember there was another thing we talked about on the podcast with a person whose name was Theo, and I loved him. Do you remember what it is?
Nope.
Go ahead, everyone. Text in your answers.
Buzz it in.
Oh my God.
Was it recent or was it a while ago?
It'd be funny. I'm just like, oh my God. Oh, all those text messages coming in.
Put in little like text notifications. Was it recent or was it like
no? It was a while ago. It was the brother.
Oh well, then what?
The brother in First
that?
Kill. You remember?
Oh wow, that was so long ago.
I love the name Theo. I don't know if I could say the same for this character, even though
I do appreciate though that we have Sydney, who is our black main character, and then we have Theo, who is this white boy who ends up moving into the neighborhood with his girlfriend. And you kind of have like those two opposing forces, I guess. I'm not sure what word I'm looking for, but the two different types of characters. And I don't think that I loved Theo's character. I think that I understand what the story was trying to do, or at least what Theo's character was trying to do for the story. But I feel like
it's crazy because like I same, because Theo is supposed to be the white character that is moving into this suburb of Brooklyn, and it's supposed to be him basically realizing, like taking a step back and being like, hey, my girlfriend Kim is like high-key racist, and so are all the other fucking white people that live here. But he's supposed to be realizing.
But just to say it now, the way that Kim was acting was definitely like a microaggression where because he brings it up too. He's like, wait, I don't think she's racist because she has a poster of Michelle Obama. Like, there's no way, right? But then he starts noticing like that she is being completely racist, and she's always constantly on edge, where I think she even texted him like, make sure you lock the door because of, these crime rates, or because of the people in the neighborhood. And she would always be like, I just feel super unsafe.
But she never mentions like, because people who are black live here. It's always just like,
she doesn't say it verbatim, but that's yeah. She always said that. She'd always be like, those people or their type, and it was like, fucking Kim, shut the fuck up. Like, I fucking hated her.
I like the idea of Theo being this person who was kind of raised with the same type of mentality that Kim has. I know that they weren't exactly the same. She was a rich girl. He was a little more on the poorer side. But,
oh yeah, he was broke. Don't be nice to him. He was broke.
No, but I like the idea of him realizing that what she was doing was wrong, because there was a situation where a guy was like going up to him and he felt unsafe, but because of the way he was walking, and he had like made an assumption of like that guy being unsafe, and it turned out that guy was just asking for money, and he was probably drugged out, but he didn't know why. But I kind of wish that the story didn't paint him as like, oh no, I would never think that, because that felt so unrealistic to me, that Theo was around Kim and all of her friends and never developed, those
microaggressions or like those types of behaviors, because he even apologizes to Sydney for Kim.
Yeah. I don't know. He seemed too perfect. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. There was something about Theo that I just wasn't loving. Yeah. And I think that I agree with you, where I would have preferred if his character, even if he hadn't meant to be like microaggressive or anything like that, like I think I would have liked him to realize his own behavior first, by the way that Kim was acting or reacting to, whatever was happening.
Yeah. Can I say something that's kind of like, I don't know, unpopular opinion?
What?
I've never been to New York. I've never been there.
Yeah.
Never been there once.
I know.
It did not feel like we were reading a story that was set in New York. Because, I don't know, it felt weird to me that, like, Sydney just fucking knew everyone. And I understand that sometimes blocks, like neighborhood blocks, can get really close. Yeah. But she fucking knew everyone. And I was just kind of like, okay, I'm going to take a step back. Try to be realistic here. I don't live in a place as big as New York. But I do know that when gentrification happens, it's not something that's going to be like, oh my God, Tim got us. Tim got us. He started changing everything. Like, gentrification is something that happens because it's a subtle change in a society that happens because people are bringing new things. It's not it's not in the sense of like, oh my God, Peggy, she's fucking gone. Like, no, it's like it has been leading up to that. So I kind of hate that.
You mean like with the disappearances?
Yes. Like, because you know, people just like Sydney, people are being asked to move, and I like that it was painted like that for Sydney, where it's just like, oh, they keep mentioning it. Like, I would have liked it if the characters around her that were disappearing were just kind of like, I don't know, the bills are too high. You know, like, I can't pay for this. How am I supposed to afford stuff? There's fucking Whole Foods on every corner. Like, I wish it would have been more like that. And then a disappearance would happen, because it's like, you can only assume what's happening.
Exactly. And I feel like, I don't know, because this book, because you chose this book, when I looked at it on Scribd, it gives you the genres. It said horror on there. So I was like, oh, wow, it's going to be spooky, right? So once I started listening to it, I was like, this isn't really spooky. Like, yeah, it has those like eerie moments, but not really spooky. And I think the same. Like, I wish that things would have happened gradually instead of just the neighbors completely disappearing. And even when they were disappearing, I wasn't even sure, like, I don't know. I was kind of expecting this to be like an unreliable narrator, like that she was just losing her mind. Because when her best friend wasn't answering her for the longest time, I was like, wait, is she even texting her? Like, I'm so confused right now. And I wish the same thing. Like, I wish that her neighbors, because they had that close knit community, I wish that her neighbors were like, I really can't afford to live here anymore. And then, you know, and then we can go from there.
Yeah. And I'm so disappointed in that sense, because I think the idea of writing a thriller/horror book about gentrification sounds so fucking good. So I'm disappointed that the execution of gentrification wasn't done well. Mostly in a place like New York, you have so much possibility of like getting rid of the corner stores. And I think that's what they were kind of going for. But, you know, like getting rid of corner stores, adding more like apartment complexes, doing things like that. But I feel like they kind of, I don't know, that
wanted to speed
really
it up a little bit.
Which is funny because this book was so short, but to you, didn't it feel so like it was either super slow or super fast? Like, it felt like nothing was happening, and then all of a sudden at once, like, okay, this person's fucking gone. Sydney and Theo fucked. Like, there's like, oh, okay.
I feel like to anyone who's listening to this and hasn't read it or listened to the book, the thriller portion of the book doesn't really happen or show itself until near the end. So I was waiting for it the entire time. I was like, oh my God, something is going to pop out of nowhere and something's going to happen where I'm going to be like, damn, goosebumps. Can you
explain
but
something
nothing
to me?
Really happened until the end.
Can you explain something to me? Do you remember that scene before Sydney and Theo? Because, by the way, Kim is a bitch and Kim leaves and they break up, whatever. Kim. But Sydney and Theo kind of have a thing between themselves. And before they act upon it, there's a moment where Theo is like, oh my gosh, Kim's going to ask me to move out. I'm going to sit down and be on my computer and open up this document. Who was watching him?
Wasn't it that random white guy at the end? That's what I thought, because I don't think it ever really said.
I don't think so either. But like,
Wait,
did he get drunk or did they drug him?
I thought they drugged him, but I'm not entirely sure why, because he's white and, he's there. Why is he even there? Oh, okay. So we should also say that him and Kim were together, right? But then Kim ends up cheating on him, or continuously cheating on him. And he is really only with her because she has money. Like, it's just convenient for him, doesn't have to work too hard. And so Kim's like, you know what? I'm going to leave. You pack your shit, figure it out. And he's like, whoa, you're going to throw me out, babe? After everything we've been through? And so she's gone, and I think this is when he's alone in the apartment, and he is like sad about the breakup. So he's like drinking, and then he ends up passing out, but it's like passing out in a way where something was obviously in the drink. Yes. And in this moment, someone is watching him, but I'm not 100% sure who this character was. I almost want to guess that it was that guy that Kim was messing around with. No?
Yeah, but that felt weird because when he woke up, he was watching corn. I don't know if I can say the word. he was watching adult videos and was just kind of like, "Oh, how'd that end up there?" And then he just closed it, and then he ends up on a document, like a shared Google document, and the person's like, "Oh, you drink too much?" And it's like, and it's weird because it doesn't feel like that ever came back,
No, I didn't. And he kind of just accepted it too.
I know.
He was kind of just like, "Oh, I drank too much. Crazy night, guys."
Just another bitch. Just another Theo Thursday.
I know, like, literally.
No, Theo. That's bad, Theo. I don't know. Like,
it was eerie, but I wish that it would have dragged on a little bit more, because it happened pretty quickly.
Yeah, and
that moment itself happened really quickly.
I'll be honest with you too. I can't really think of other moments that aren't this one that stood out to me a lot that aren't the end. You know what I mean? That was really the only one for me.
Let me think. Hold on. So, well, the other moment that stood out to me was that garden scene. Oh my God. Wait, yeah. Okay. Let me talk about the garden scene.
Yeah, set the scene up.
Set the scene up. Okay, where do I even start? Okay, so Sydney has been calling her mom every now and then. Anytime she's sad, she'll call her mom. It goes straight to voicemail. She leaves her a message sometimes. Sometimes she just wants to hear her voice in the voicemail. And there's a moment where there's a garden, right, in the neighborhood, and no one really owned it, but Sydney's mom, Yolanda, I believe was her name.
Yeah.
She planted a lot of plants there, and she had made Sydney promise her that she would take care of the garden and, make sure that she would take care of the plants and all that. But then Sydney notices that, someone had bought the land or bought the area or bought the garden or something, and she gets really pissed off about it, and she's like fighting these officers. And I hate it this moment because the officers are like, "Oh, what are you gonna do about it?" And they're being very aggressive towards her, and so she is very, very upset about it. So she goes home, and I believe she's home, and Theo is with her, and she starts telling him, or she starts confessing to him. No, he's comforting her, right? And then she just kind of blurts it out like, "Oh, my mom's dead, and I buried her in the garden." And he's because like, "What poor. The?" Yeah. And he was like, "What the fuck?" But the weird part isn't that she confessed to him. It's that the next day she notices that there's like dirt under his fingernails. Yeah. And she's like, "What? Where were you?" And he kind of brushes it off. And he's like, "Oh yeah, yeah, I went to the garden, and it's not that easy to move a body, or no, what is it, to like look for a body?" I don't know what he said, but it was weird. And then he was like, "Oh, she wasn't there though." And then she was just like, "What?" Like,
I'm
what
like
the
still
fuck?
kind of confused because how did she react afterwards? Was she just kind of more like confused at the fact that her mom wasn't there, or like freaked out with
So
the fact that he did that?
I don't think she was freaked out enough that he tried to dig up her mom, because I feel like she felt so alone in this moment because her best friend was not reaching out to her or answering her text messages, and all of her
Mhm.
neighbors were, being replaced by white people. And so she literally saw him and heard that and was like, oh my God, he is like actually the only one who's here for me. And she gets turned on by that. And that's when they have sex for the first time. No, like it was like right after
That's
that.
so weird.
It is weird because it's like, where's your mom? Like, where's your mother? Like, that's weird. But but she also thinks
Where the fuck
that,
my mom at?
no, literally.
Oh,
But
God.
she also thinks that maybe they already found her body, like the
Yeah.
people who now own this area. But really, like, she doesn't think about it for too long because they mess around.
Mm-hmm. Oh, God. Yeah, that stood out to me too. But honestly, I don't know. Like, so many things in this story I feel like happened, and I feel like I'm supposed to think about it. But because it's never really brought up again, I'm just kind of like, oh, that's something that happened.
Yeah. And it really threw me off when it happened. I was like, is she really going to sleep with him after this? Also, his fingernails are still dirty. Ew.
Ew, go wash your hands.
Go wash your hands. Go scrub.
I wanted to bring a part up too. Oh, how did you feel about them being together?
You know what? I wish. I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion because I don't even know how anyone feels about this book, but I really wish that this book didn't have romance. I did not care for Theo and Sydney as a couple. Like, I liked that when they were becoming friends, but then when it turned romantic, I was like, I think it kind of took away from like the eeriness. But then again, it so quickly turned into, oh, so cute, to, oh, Theo's a fucking liar. He's actually been conspiring with Kim this entire time, and he has something to do with all of these disappearances. And so what I hated was how quick Sydney was to be like, oh, I never trusted him from the very beginning. But it's like, but you do though, because he's the only one that's here. So you kind of have to trust him. I don't know.
You're gonna have to explain the ending to me again because I'm still fucking confused as fuck. But before that, I do want to say that I feel like this story would have been more impactful because the whole thing was about, missing old Brooklyn. I kind of wish, because he was what New Brooklyn was becoming. He was the people that were gentrifying the area. So I kind of wish that they had just kept their friendship to show that like New Brooklyn and Old Brooklyn were coming together to make their own Brooklyn, like I know that's kind of, yeah, because I know that he didn't want to take away from what made it Brooklyn, because he enjoyed like the little things like, oh, there's a corner store over here that sells really good vegan bowls, or things like that. Like I liked that was his character. And I feel like because they were trying to push the romance, because it was just thrown out there, it made me not care for their friendship, because it was like, oh, well, now they're together. So it feels like that's as deep as their relationship gets, not really talking to each other anymore.
Yeah, I know. I agree with you. I wish there wasn't any romance in this book. Coming from me, that's wild.
Okay, I need you to explain the Theo conspiracy or conspiring with Kim, because I'm lost.
It was, I'm gonna be honest, even when I was listening to the audiobook, I didn't think it made that much sense. That's why I thought the book was going to be unreliable narrator, because I did not think that Sydney was making any sense in this moment. Well, there was many moments, but this was one of them. So she is, I believe, at Theo's place, or he's there, or he's at her place, but
this is way at the end, right?
Yeah, this is near the end. No, I think she's at his place, because then she notices that an iPad starts dinging. And so she looks at the iPad and she's looking through these messages, and the person who, like, the name of the text says honey cheeks or sweet cheeks. And she sees that it's between Kim, and she thinks that it's between Kim and, oh my God. Thank you. She thinks that it's between Kim and Theo, like these messages. And she sees that Kim's very much like, oh, fuck her. You know, I can't stand her. I can't stand anyone in this neighborhood. Like, the way that she was talking made it very obvious that she hated the people there. And the responses were like, oh yeah, me too, babe. I'm trying to get rid of her. Like, you know, like, it seemed like Theo was somehow involved with these disappearances, and Kim was also involved with these disappearances. And so immediately Sydney is just like, oh, fuck you. I knew that this was too good to be true, right? And so she immediately confronts him, and he's just like, that's not mine. That's Kim's iPad or tablet or whatever. And I feel like this moment just kind of happened very quickly. Like, it got resolved very quickly, because then she didn't trust him for a second, but then she was like, okay.
But if I remember correctly too, because like, this is the part that went over my head, because I was confused that was happening. But then afterwards she was like, I don't trust him, but he's also the only one I could trust. And then it was kind of resolved, right? Okay. Yeah. Yeah,
well, because she does think to herself, like, well, I have literally nobody else, because still her best friend is not responding to her messages, and she just feels really alone. And I think at this point, Theo like tells her that a white guy broke into her house, into Sydney's house, and okay, this part gets a little bit confusing, but I know that Sydney is in like this like secret passageway of the house, and that's where she finds her best friend's body. And she sees, like, I think the phone is there, and she sees that her friend was trying to text her before whatever happened, and it said something like, I love you and I'm sorry, or something along those lines. And when this happens, I think at this point she still didn't really trust Theo. So she's like holding a gun out towards him, because she believes that, oh, he had something to do with Drea's murder. But then this fucking white man just shows up, and I think Sydney like immediately shoots him, right?
I think so.
And then Theo is fighting him back as well. And then that's when Theo realizes that this white guy was the one that was talking to Kim and trying to fucking make this neighborhood better or whatever. And that's when I think the power goes out, I think. And so the only place that has lights is an abandoned hospital.
And in that hospital, they find everyone, right?
Yeah, so they're in the hospital's like basement tunnels, and that's when Sydney and Theo both like finally find all of the like the people, like the Black residents that were once there. And were, disappeared. But, I think that Sydney assumed that they just like moved away without saying anything. But then she did have a moment where she was like, there's no way that they just left without saying goodbye, because they had that type of relationship where they would have said something to her. Yeah. So that's when they find them, and she realizes that they're all just kind of like test subjects. And if I remember correctly, they were test subjects to cure like opioid, like the drug crisis, I believe.
How to handle it? Wasn't it? Because that was what was happening to the guy that reacted to Theo, right? At the beginning.
Yes. Yeah. So it had something to do with like trying to cure like opioids. I believe so. Like everything happened very quickly in this moment. And to me, like they were paralleling with what happened with Theo when he found that one guy who was like, help me. Like, so he was saying mom too, right? Like something about like, oh, can you take me to my mom? Or so it was trying to parallel that.
And it's also like kind of, I feel like it is kind of making a statement, because if you remember at the beginning of the story when Sydney was talking about her mom and how her mom had passed away and that she had been feeling so much pain, but they never believed her that she was feeling a lot of pain. And it kind of reminds me of the stories of back then when
when they didn't give them any painkillers.
Yeah, because of like
or
the
anesthesia.
The stereotype that if you have darker skin, then you have a higher pain tolerance. And that's kind of like what it felt like was going on here, that, you know, because Black people have a higher pain tolerance, which is not true. Then,
that's not
you know,
true.
we can use them as test subjects. And I feel like that's kind of what it was going towards.
Like that was the commentary.
Yeah.
I think so too, but I wish that it would have elaborated a little bit more.
Me too. Because that's an interesting premise, but you're right. It felt so rushed that everything was going over my head.
Yeah, and also like so much is still happening in this moment, because that's when they find Kim's dad as well. And this whole fucking fight breaks out between Theo, Kim's dad, and Sydney. And I think Theo kills both of them, no? Kim and Kim's dad?
Yes.
And then after that, they kind of just go back to the basement, and then they kind of like, they're like trying to free the people that are like held there against their will.
Yeah.
But then I'm not entirely sure what happens after that.
Dude, I do not remember, because all I remember is that they do try to free them. But is there a time skip, or is that too far ahead?
No, I think that if I remember correctly, and again, go read this. This is not perfect, because I feel like so much was happening that it was a little bit confusing at the end. But I'm pretty sure that at the end, it's the neighbors who help Theo and Sydney, and then they burn down the hospital at the end.
I don't think they save everyone, right?
No.
Because the people don't move back.
Yeah. And then doesn't Sydney like kill two people as well? Like I feel like I remember her shooting two people.
That was the thing. Does the epilogue end with like the insinuating that she's gonna kill a lot of people?
I don't
Is
know.
that like the point of this?
I don't know. I thought the point of the epilogue was that this like gentrification, because they're watching the news, aren't they? And the gentrification is just continuously happening, but it's happening in other neighborhoods. And I'm pretty sure that Sydney's kind of like reacting to it. And I don't know if she's going to do anything about it, but if she does, I wouldn't be entirely surprised.
But she grabs her mom's revolver, right? Isn't that how it ends?
Yeah, but where is she going to go? Is she just going to go straight to the neighborhood?
That's what I'm guessing is going on. And like, honestly, that's the thing I wanted to bring up, by the way. The fact that this is happening everywhere else. This makes me so fucking mad, because gentrification does happen everywhere, and I understand that. But I don't think Sydney would have dealt with it this way. And I would have really enjoyed, like I said, someone who is like part of all of this gentrification, and also part of the problem being Theo and her, who has been born and raised in Brooklyn. I wish they would have came to a middle ground and been like, you know what, I do understand, you know, more buildings, but that doesn't mean we have to get rid of our home. I would have liked if both of them worked together, you know, because it didn't really feel like that. It felt like they kind of both agreed, like, no, old Brooklyn. And then they are going on a killing spree? Like, is that really how you're going to solve this issue? And like, I don't know.
I completely understand what you're trying to say. And in a way I agree with you, but at the same time I feel like the author was probably trying to play with like the eeriness and trying to fight back, you know, the crime of like these people losing their homes, right? And them not being able to do anything about it. So I think that sorry, I'm like stuttering a lot. Can you please cut out with like all my stutters?
Yes.
I think that it's just trying to fight violence with violence. And I don't entirely hate that. I just kind of wish that the development would have been a little bit more. Like the whole ending part happened so fast that it felt like so much like action for something, because I feel like the beginning and even the middle was very, very slow. Like I wasn't even sure where the hell this story was going for the longest time. I think this story would work really well as a movie because like to play with the eeriness and like that question of like where the hell is everyone. Like I think it would work better as a movie. I'm not saying I didn't like it as a book. I'm just saying that I was so lost for the longest time that even in moments it was losing me. Like I wanted to stick with the story, but damn, like it was hard for me to stay focused because I wasn't sure where it was going.
And you know what? I so glad that you brought up the whole movie aspect, because I did write in my notes that I really liked the idea of like, you know, it kind of ending the way it begun. And now that I understand this, well, I don't understand it, but now that I kind of see what they were trying to do with Black America, like mentioning it would have been nice if mentioning Black America at the beginning, which was the theme park where people get to feel what it's like to have slaves, and then all of this shit happening and them realizing that it's not going to end. It's just going to happen in a more subtle way. I wish it would have ended with like maybe a commercial to something that was like, you know, Black America's, it's a bad thing, but you should try this other thing that's exactly like Black America, just very subtle with the slavery. Like, I wish it would
like
have
a
just shown
microaggression.
that. Yes, because then it just goes like, yes, you, Sydney and Theo experienced this and it was a lot, but you know what? Even if you stopped it, it's still fucking happening everywhere. Like, that's good. But
that would have been a really good idea. And it almost reminds me of like Jordan Peele's Us. Where you know how they played that commercial. Oh fuck, I can't remember the name of it. They played that commercial of Hands with America or something like that. Like they were all holding hands, and then that was paralleled with the ending when they were all just holding hands together and they were forming like a line. Like I kind of
fucks me up.
I know exactly like that. I think that's where it wanted to go, and I wish that it would have done that. Like I feel like that's such a good idea, what you brought up, like it being like a commentary of what was told to us at the very beginning, but it's like still bad at the end, you know?
I will be honest with you. I did read one review, not the whole thing. I read a little bit of it about how this book is constantly like compared to Get Out, because of the fact that you can have a relationship with someone, but you don't really know them. So like in Get Out, how he thought he had a good relationship with his girlfriend, but she's a horrible, toxic person. And crazy, like psychotic. I guess I could see that with Theo and Sydney, but because of how quick their relationship turned into like a romantic one and how quick she was to drop him, it just felt unrealistic. Like I didn't like that. But I wish I would have.
Even at the end, I'm not entirely sure what moment it was. It might have been literally the end. Oh, yeah. Because wasn't it like when that white guy came in and she was like, who do I shoot? Like she thought that Theo was aiming the gun towards her. And then she was thinking like, oh my God, I knew it. I knew I couldn't trust him. Like, because she even makes a comment like, there's no way that he's going to pick Kim. No, there's no way that he's going to pick me over Kim because he's known Kim for X amount of time and he's only known Sydney for a week.
Yep.
So just that whole time, she really did not trust him at all. But then somehow they still ended up like staying together romantically.
Yeah, I didn't. Ugh. Gosh, I don't know. I have a lot of thoughts about this book. Is there anything else you want to bring up before we go to overall thoughts?
Let me double check my notes. Hold on.
You know, I'm surprised this episode is as long as it is, but I was also really excited to talk about this with you.
I know. I was super excited too. I was excited to hear your beautiful, beautiful thoughts.
Oh my God.
No, I think that we have pretty much covered everything. I'm so glad that you brought up the what happened at the beginning though, because I forgot to. I did write it, but I didn't like write it on my notes on my notes app. You know.
I'll start with my overall thoughts. I'm also glad I brought that up. I'm glad that I talked about it with you because like I feel like I didn't understand shit, but now after talking it out, I feel like I have a little more appreciation for the story because like I said,
and I feel like that's why I love doing the podcast with you because sometimes I don't really grasp what the story is trying to tell me until I start talking about it with you, you know?
Yeah. And it's good because we both see it in different ways. So I enjoy that. I feel like now I can say how I fucking feel. And the fact is that I do like the premise of this story. I like the idea of gentrification being viewed as like a main point in a thriller, a psychological thriller / horror, I guess. And I would have really liked it if it was more subtle. It felt like that's what it was trying to be, but at the same time, it was just fucking happening. Like, I don't believe, there's no fucking way that fucking Sydney knows the fucking entirety of Brooklyn. Like, it felt weird that this was happening.
You just don't get it.
I don't know. It was just weird that it was happening, but she's also like, I know fucking everyone. Tim from across the street, Peggy down the block. Like, I know fucking everyone. Yeah. And it's like, if this were actually commentary on gentrification, then it should be something where it's like, I don't fucking know who those neighbors are. Like, who the fuck is that? Isn't that where Tim lives? Like, it should have been something like that. You know, and then people being like, who the fuck is Tim? No, that's
so you wanted it to be more realistic, is what you're saying.
Yes. I feel like that would have added to the uncanniness because it felt like they knew everyone. I feel like, okay, what is there to be scared of realistically if you actually know the people in your town? Like, of course, there's the whole thing of assumptions, which I think is a really good thing to play with, mostly if you're writing about gentrification, because assumptions is a big thing that plays into racism. And that could have been something that they had like used in order to see the perceptions that Theo has on people, because of course he's going to have different perceptions because of how he grew up. And I wish we would have seen that, but it feels like they only used assumptions in Sydney's character when she assumed that Theo wasn't on her side. And I fucking hated that. I hated that was really the only time that we saw her perception being used as like a way to show racism. Because either than that, it was really only that. And when Kim was being obviously racist. And I don't know. I get it. And I know that you're not supposed to like them. And I know that you're supposed to see like, wow, they're really horrible people. But again, I wish it would have been subtle. I know that they were microaggressions. But as a reader, you already obviously know that she's not a good person. I wish that she would have been more fake and, you know, like been in the story throughout the story so we can see like, oh no, everything she had done up to this point was to lead to this, you know, something in that sense. But I did like the idea of Sydney and Theo, mostly both of them working together. I really wish they would have just remained friends. I think I would have enjoyed that a lot more. The whole mother thing still throws me off. The fact that her mom was buried there. I don't really understand what that really has to do with the story. Also, did they ever find her body?
I'm not sure. I don't remember. I think I'm pretty sure it was brought up, but I don't remember the details, to be honest.
Mom is probably just MIA.
Yeah,
but
she's just gone.
The idea of it is creepy. And I like the idea of it, but I don't see why that was even brought up. I like that both characters have done something like morally wrong. I adds to them, but like because this wasn't really written to the best, I don't really care for that. I do really wish that I would have liked this story more, but I have so much to say about it, you know, when, you know, counting an hour ago where I felt like I had nothing to say. Now I feel like I don't want to stop talking about this.
Yeah.
But, that being said, I think I'm going to say 2.75. And if I were on Goodreads, I'd give it a 3.
Wow. I thought you would have given it higher. I'm disappointed. Not at you,
I will tell you though,
at
before
myself.
we started talking about this, I was like set on 1.
What? You didn't like it that much?
Yeah, because I didn't really understand what the whole point was. But after talking about the whole Black America thing with you, and just like the comparison of Get Out and the idea of
us,
like the microaggressions, I like the idea of it. I just wish that this were written a little better. I think the length of it was really short. I feel like she could have added a little more and maybe play with suspense and tension a little more. I feel like that would have added to the story.
Yeah. I definitely agree with you. One of my main problems with the story was the romance. And I feel like it was just unnecessary. It didn't really add much to the story itself. What I thought was gonna happen was that Theo was gonna be like a part of this whole thing. And she was just like losing her mind because she had nobody else. And when she was texting her best friend and never receiving a response, like I wasn't really thinking like, oh, her best friend is dead. I was more thinking like, oh, she's lost touch with reality. And maybe she thinks she's texting her, but she's actually not. Like, I thought that was where it was going. Like, that made me feel very uncomfortable. And that definitely played with like the eeriness that, you know, was kind of sprinkled in there. I wish that it's so weird because I think that the story was very slow up until the ending, but it didn't really have enough like thriller aspect. Like I wish that I wouldn't have seen that it had like the horror genre because it didn't feel like that at all. Like, yeah, it was suspenseful, but I didn't love the way that it was executed. But I do agree with you that I love that this story is like a social commentary on gentrification and, you know, playing or how do you say it? Commenting on that with like thriller, right? And how it's eerie, it's creepy, it's not okay, but people don't really realize how it's not okay. And, you know, that kind of goes along with like the microaggressions that were happening in this book as well. And I will say that I do love the idea of the story. Even though the ending was the way that it was, I think that it would have been okay had she maybe added more to it so that it didn't feel like it like fucking slapping me in the face like that. Because so much was happening back to back to back that I was like, what the fuck? And I don't know if you agree, but it was eerie, but it wasn't really like creepy enough with the ending.
Yeah.
You know? Like it was, I don't know how to describe it, but it wasn't like creepy enough for me. And I don't know. I feel like before we talked about the book, I was the same way as you, where I think I would have rated it at like honestly, like a 2.25, only because I didn't love the romance and I didn't love the way that the story was paced. But discussing it with you, and especially you bringing up, you know, the Black America and how that's kind of what the ending was going for. Maybe it wasn't there exactly, but that's what it was trying to parallel with. It does make me kind of appreciate the story more. I just wish that we would have seen Sydney and Theo display, like, I don't know, more moments of insanity. I'm not entirely sure exactly what I wanted, because them going on this like killing spree and, you know, hinting at going on multiple killing sprees, you know, based on them seeing the news. I wish that we would have actually seen them be more unhinged from like closer to the beginning of the story. But I did really like the writing. Like, I feel like I was able to stay with the story overall. It was just the moment. It was just the moments of like where it was like so slow that it was losing me a little bit, but it wasn't because of the writing. It was just because of like the pacing of the story. And no, wait, hold on. I think that I would rate the book a 3.5.
Damn. Dude, that's pretty high up there.
Yeah, no, I did really like the story. I do love a good thriller. I do wish that it would have, you know, developed, you know, that suspenseful or psychological thriller suspense genre a little bit more. But overall, I do really like what the story is trying to convey.
Dude, this is so crazy, but I feel like this episode is the most that we haven't joked and actually like critiqued the book.
Wait, you're right. Oh my God, who are we? I don't like this.
Wait, did we do a book review?
Wait, are we book reviewers? Oh my God, wait, quick, say a joke.
I know.
Wait,
no, I
what
feel
are
like,
we?
Dude, I feel like my brain is huge. We really did put like all our brain cells together for this one.
I don't like when you say that because you make it sound like I'm dumb.
No, we're both really smart. It's hella brain cells. But like,
I have a lot of brain cells, okay? Count them.
I don't know. I like when we talk about thrillers because I feel like when we talk about romance, I fucking love romance. And that's like what I gravitate towards.
Don't say it out loud.
Like this book and Silent Patient and
that's
I
it.
forget the Lucy Foley book. Yeah. Like, I feel like when we talk about those types of books, we have a lot more to say.
I think it's because we don't want to joke about it. I don't know. Did we make any jokes with the other ones?
Yeah.
I don't remember.
You're okay. I remember when we were, remember in Silent Patient, there was that character named Diomedes, and we kept calling him Dadamedes because he was like the dad. Yeah. It's like, Dad, I'm a little insane, but I also want to play catch with you. It didn't feel appropriate.
Dadamedes, all I needed was a dad, okay? That's all I needed.
It was a father Medes.
Oh my God. Yeah, I do feel like we took a turn. And it's so funny because before we started this, we were both kind of like, yeah, let's just, no script, okay? Let's just talk about whatever we want and just talk about this like if it was just you, me, no camera or audio recorder, I should say.
But I don't know. Even though I didn't score it a 5, I do want to say that I fucking love any type of it can be a book, a TV show, a movie that has its social commentary on like a big issue. Because, I fucking love Jordan Peele. And I don't know. I'm so down for this type of shit. And I feel like if Alyssa Cole ever wrote more thrillers, or if she has written more thrillers, I feel like I would read it because I like how she wrote it. I just feel like this one was probably a little rushed.
And I agree with you. I definitely love Jordan Peele's films as well. And I mean, I'm not saying that that's what she was going for, but it does kind of feel like, some similarities a little bit. If this ever were turned into a movie, oh my God, I would be so down to watch it.
I feel like it would do well as a movie.
Yeah, I think so too.
But I think, oh my God, I think we reached the end of the episode. I feel so accomplished right now.
I know. Who are we? Quick, let's make another one.
I know. Thank you so much for all of you who are listening. If you are listening to us in Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Amazon Music, or anywhere you get your podcasts on. Thank you so much. If you can leave a rating of 5 stars and a review, that would be amazing. Ratings actually make a huge difference too. So for those of you who have done it, thank you. And for those of you who haven't, it takes like 5 seconds. So go ahead and leave a review right now. Or sorry, leave a rating right now, because it don't take that long.
Yeah, and I think that it definitely has boosted us up a lot more. I think we are more recommended because we have been getting a lot of new listeners, which we really appreciate it. But you know what we would love more is if you guys would let us know that you like what you're listening to. So one way would be definitely to give us 5 stars. That would be really, really nice.
Also, if you want to help us be more known, why don't you tell your friends, family, and loved ones about us, because the best type of exposure is through word of mouth. If you are listening and watching us on YouTube, thank you. If you can like, comment, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. We post twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays. If you feel like your heart is just so big, you just want to help just a little more, you can also join us on Patreon. We want to start a book community, and we want to have more input with the people who are listening to us, and, you know, kind of like a conversation about the books we're going to be discussing. As well as just things that are like more in depth with like the book community, or maybe like videos that don't really have to do with the book community and us just talking.
Us just discussing whatever. And also we really want to give, you know, our listeners more of a voice. Like, we want to know what you guys want from us. So Patreon would definitely be one way to get a hold of us and let us know what you want to hear, what you want us to talk about.
What's the URL?
And you can find us on patreon.com/bookfix.
Thank you. If you want to follow us on social media, we do have an Instagram at the Book Fix Pod, THEBOOKFIXPOD, and at the Book Fix on TikTok, THEBOOKFIX. Please join us. I think we're pretty funny.
I think you're very funny. I think you're hilarious.
Thank you. I haven't really posted much recently, but I'm trying to get more on top of it as soon as... It's funny. I feel like every month I tell you, as soon as January ends, I'll be free. No, as soon as February ends, I'll be free. I feel like I'm never free.
It's okay. I'm not either, but we're trying, and that's all that matters.
So thank you, everyone. Usually at the end of episodes, Yajaira will roll her digital dice, and if it lands on an even number, we read a positive review of the story. If it lands on an odd number, we read a negative review of the story. We don't really talk about it. We kind of just let it be. We're not connected to it at all. But I think that's a good way to end it. Why don't you tell us our number, and I'll try to find a review.
Okay. We got a 2.
Which is an even number. That is a positive review. There was one I wanted to read. I actually want to read... one. If you don't want to keep this one, it's fine. But it's written by Mari, which she's a really big book talker. And I fucking love her.
Booktuber, book person. I fucking love her too. Even when she drags some of the books that I love. Because I'm like, you know what, Marty? You have a point. Mighty Ness? I think her YouTube is My Name is Mighty Ness. I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
Fucking love her. I love her thoughts, her opinions, her brain.
She wrote about this book, and she actually got a free copy of this book. So this is her review. She gave it a 4.5 stars and wrote, I'm glad that I went into this having heard from other people that this isn't quite thriller or quite horror. I think it helps set my expectations away from the genre and towards a new Alyssa Cole book about gentrification. This was excellent. It isn't exactly subtle, but then again, neither are the topics that surround gentrification. It was bold and cutting and demanded attention. It was a bit creepy and a bit sordid, as much as for all the explained things as the unexplained ones. I really loved how we sort of slowly moved along the front 2/3 of the book, a little unmoored in what exactly is happening, because it made the ending pack one heck of a punch. To me, this felt most like a haunted house gothic novel, except it's the whole dang neighborhood that is haunted. I kept thinking of other gothic horrors by women of color that I have read this year. Mexican Gothic and Catherine House. Sign me up for any and all novels exploring structural racism and colonialism through haunted places. Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you on Tuesday.
Bye.
Bye.
Dude, I'm so shocked that we talk so much.
I know, me too. I thought this one was going to be like a shorter one, but I do appreciate that we both had a lot to say. I was going to say, you still haven't read Mexican Gothic, have you?
No, and I own it. I mean, look at it sometimes.
And sometimes she looks at me back.
I get kind of scared. I'm like, put those peepers away.
Oh my God, dude. Sorry. Maybe you should read it. I don't know.
I
don't think you're going to like it.
No?
I don't think you're going to like it. No.
Well, I'm excited to read it. You know, back then, before we became like very heavy into reading, because now I can say I consider myself a reader. Back then, when we were just reading for the podcast, yeah. I don't think I could have sat down and read a book I dislike. Now that we're into it and we are readers, I feel like if you told me this book's gonna suck, I'm gonna be like, strap me in. I'm here. I wanna see why this is shitty.
No, I loved Mexican Gothic. I love that book, but I feel like you're not gonna like it. I don't know why. Like, I think maybe it's because Melissa, our friend, doesn't like it. And I feel like you and her align a little bit more, usually. So I'm like, damn, I don't think Charlie's gonna like it then.
Who knows? Because I love Melissa. You know I love Melissa. But she also liked Hellbent.
Ooh, Melissa, that was a call out.
I'm sorry. I love you, Melly. And I feel like people do have to like Hellbent. You know, it's out there for a reason. I love the name Darlington. The rest of the book kind of fucking sucked.
Okay, that's it. We're done. Bye.
Bye.
We're not talking about Hellbent for another hour.
Welcome to Hellbent Part 2. Okay, bye.
This is like part 5.